evening, and we are back here tonight, and we are lucky to have Rebecca, the Calaveras County Clerk Recorder. Again, this is the day after Election Day in November. We were hoping we were going to have full results, all the rest of that stuff. We have most of them for Calaveras County, but not national stuff. But thank you for joining us again.
Thanks, it's nice being here.
So are you tired?
Until I got here, I was tired. You guys amped me up.
Well, how'd it go? How'd the election day go?
Overall, it was an extremely smooth day.
Good.
We were really busy, but everything seemed to fall into place. We always have those little kinks with
Sure.
elections.
Yes.
They run out of paper, we get it to them, but everybody got to vote, and it was a pretty smooth day considering the high turnout.
Very nice. Now, we were talking a little bit before we started that for your tenure of working in the office there and then after becoming the elected, you think this may be the highest turnout that you've seen?
I have no problem saying that we're going to be 83% turnout.
Wow.
Which 83% turnout
83%.
was what we saw in November 2008
Okay.
presidential.
Yeah. Now, how does that compare to other counties, do you think? I mean, as far as other jurisdictions, do you think?
I think the entire state is going to have had a very high turnout.
Yeah.
The state totals, the last time I looked, I wanted to say they were at 60%, which for a statewide,
Which is pretty high.
at this point is pretty high, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of big counties that have a lot of ballots left to count. So.
Yeah. Now this year, with all the COVID, with all the mail-in, all the rest of that stuff, things went pretty smooth as far as...
I don't know if it's because we were preparing for the
Right.
worst, like
Right.
everyone was out thinking we're going to have major issues, nobody's going to follow COVID orders, and as the county we have to follow all the COVID guidelines. So voters were extremely respectful. We had lines, longer lines than we'd seen before because of the turnout and also requiring the 6 feet social distancing. And voters were very respectful of it and very just
And from
grateful.
what I saw, people seemed happy.
They
right?
were happy,
I mean, it
even
was
though
a
they were
happy-
waiting
it was
in line,
yeah.
and everything went pretty well. So
Yeah.
I couldn't have asked for a better day.
Very nice. Congratulations. Because I know there's always, you got to get one of the books. There's always, it's, this year didn't have big races in, Calaveras County centric, but we did have some Angels Camp City races. Now, I
Yes.
know you said you still have how many ballots out left still?
In our office at this point, we have 5,000 roughly
Okay.
left to count. And in the coming days, we're going to keep getting more as more postmarked ballots postmarked by Election Day keep coming in. So
Right. And so those, you don't know how many of those are broken down by City of Angels specific,
Right.
but there's some of those City of Angels races that are within, double digits or less, right?
yeah, less than 1%. So
Yeah.
we always like to see definitely more than 1%. We're big on wide margins.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that's less than 1%, we will be doing a double count on, but they're also they're still up in the air on where they're going. So
Yeah.
with that many ballots left to count, I wouldn't count that that's the final result.
Right. I mean, some of those may flip, maybe not, but
They very may well
Yeah.
not. It's not unusual to see the trend continue. When you see a trend on how people are voting, it's not unusual to see that continue. So it very well will stay exactly the way it is, but there's always that possibility.
for your department, you want to see everything 10% spread or more, right? Isn't that the...
I want to see a big difference, and then when we start counting those, I want to see the machines counted everything right.
One of the things we thought would be useful for people to talk about a little bit is now that election stuff and the specifics of these operations inside elections departments nationwide now are going to be not only the subject of news for the next couple of weeks, but litigation stuff and everything else. Some of the terms, I know some of the terms that are about today is initially if races are close, they do a canvass. What is a canvass versus a what do some of the terms actually mean?
That's a good question. I use these terms and just expect everybody knows what I'm
Right,
talking about,
right.
and then they're like, what scanning? What do you mean, counting? But canvass is essentially the audit after the election.
Okay, so it's an audit.
We go and audit everything that happened out at vote centers. We audit ourselves, we audit the elections equipment to make sure it was we just go through and re-audit everything. The ballots themselves, we do a manual hand count to ensure that the machines were coded properly and everything was read the way it was supposed to. So we're continuing to count ballots in that time period, and then we're double checking ourselves in that time period.
But in a canvas, you would catch routine things like if somebody transposed a number, or if somebody, I mean, the big glaring, just go basically checking your work, so to speak, right?
So at each vote center before they leave on election night, they also do like a balance of themselves and double check their work. And then we take that and we double check to see if they audited themselves correctly, and then see if anywhere they were off, make sure that it aligned. Make sure the ballot paper issued matches the ballot stock left over, so we didn't have any ballot stock out there where it doesn't belong. So
for people in the general public, it's basically it's analogous to an audit, right?
Yep,
you audit yourself, you're just double checking and everything else, as opposed to a recount. Now, if somebody's actually doing a recount, I guess that's even more granular. Isn't there like a machine count, then there's a manual count? I mean, what's the difference once it gets to a recount stage?
Someone requests a recount, they have an option whether they want us to do a manual recount or if they just want us to do a machine recount. I've never had anyone request a machine recount, and maybe one time somebody started to do a recount and requesting one, but we were going to count it anyway. So when we told them, well, we just did a manual count, because it was so close, they opted not to do it. Anytime a race is within 1%, though, we're always going to do a full manual count of every single ballot. So if somebody did request it, it's on their dollar too. So they have to be willing to pay us for the time to do that.
So as we're getting ready to do the taping on the show, then the Trump campaign requested a recount for the state of Wisconsin. So for a statewide recount, what are they looking at?
That's interesting. I don't know what the rules in Wisconsin are, if they charge the person requesting the recount or not, but that would be substantial to pay even an entire week's worth of a whole state's elections employees to count ballots. And they're not just counting the small portion of a certain race, they're counting the entirety of all the ballots again.
Yeah.
So that would be substantial for sure.
And I guess it would be based on the state law, if it's under 1%, which it is, type of thing, and maybe the cost structures are different as well.
It may very well be.
Okay, yeah. Any other, let's see, and one of the things today was the lawsuits on the election observers. There was in Pennsylvania, the lawsuit was filed saying that the observers were not allowed, within a useful distance. Like they were allowed in the building, but
they had to keep 6 feet distance.
No, it was more like 50 or 60 feet.
Oh, interesting.
So basically the lawsuit
I missed that today.
No, I think the lawsuit was basically then, is there the distance that they were forced, I may be wrong on those numbers exactly, but I think the point is the distances they were forced to stay away made it meaningless. So if somebody's an election observer, just tell me what...
Our guidelines were pretty basic. They needed to wear a mask in the polling place, because that's what we required everyone to do. And they had to maintain 6 feet social distancing for everyone surrounding them.
Got it.
As long as they could do that and they weren't obstructing the voting process, they were welcome to observe as long as
How about an observer at the county office? How about is there something, is similar guidelines for that?
Same rule. So if we could accommodate them within our office while maintaining 6 feet social distancing, we would let them observe within. Most people wanted to observe just our lobby area where people were voting, and they were managing to do so without any obstruction. We also put a TV in our lobby so that we could be scanning the ballots in the back, and if anybody wanted to watch us, they could do that, because if more than one person wanted to come watch us, it was impossible to maintain 6 feet.
Because your rooms are too small.
It was impossible to maintain social distancing.
Okay. So you put a TV up. So
we put a TV up and a camera watching what we were doing.
So it was the court proceedings on the on the monitor, right?
Yeah, I don't think anyone was that interested. They asked a few questions based off of it,
sure.
Though, so I'm like, somebody was interested.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess if you're looking at a city like Philadelphia, where they're going to have the backlog is going to be huge.
Right.
It's it is an interesting thing. Going through this year and everything else, are there any suggestions that you would have for the election process going forward that would make things a little simpler or cleaner? Do you think it's pretty decent?
Overall for the election process in Calaveras or in?
Well, let's say Calaveras versus National for what you've heard or anything like that.
I think Calaveras is lucky. I think I go back to this a lot. We're a small county, and the closer knit community and the smaller, even your ratio of manager to worker in the field is smaller. So
but you can still wrap your arms around it, right? I mean, you can still reach out and touch it. I mean,
and know what's going on. So I think the larger you get, where that is more distant, you're going to have more issues.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's a real suggestion, as I'm saying. Just break up all the counties and make them something. I don't think that's realistic.
But I think that one of the things is we tried to, ahead of this last month, go over some of the stuff to where we're talking about, the run up to this is everybody was talking about the voter fraud and all the rest of this stuff. But one of the things I think that I thought was important to mention is that this isn't this is you're an elected official for one county. And in California, there's 55 other?
58.
58, okay.
Yeah.
So, the odds of there's probably a few bad actors one way or, out there. But the point is what we were trying to say earlier is the odds of somebody doing systematic voter fraud,
that's very difficult.
Yeah, I
think it's nearly impossible.
I
don't doubt that voter fraud is occurring, or people, and I don't doubt that to some extent it's getting through. I greatly doubt that it impacts the result of any election.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Because the stuff like the horror stories you hear, they found 20,000 votes in a closet type of stuff. It's.
We don't have a 20,000 hidden ballots anywhere.
You don't?
I can guarantee you
right.
that.
But don't you think at most municipalities then, the odds of it.
And even when I say I don't doubt there's some voter fraud, I haven't firsthand caught voter fraud ever. I'm just saying, yeah, that's possible. Somebody voted their wife's ballot and signed for them and put it through, and it got through. Not to the extent that it's coming back to us that we're hearing these things are occurring. So.
One of the things I think we talked about last month that I think is worth repeating is, like, for example, if you take a county like Los Angeles County that has more people on the voter rolls than actually exist.
Right.
You said that everything comes in they have to you verify every signature.
Yeah,
right?
We verify every signature.
So.
And if it doesn't match, we look at the entire household signatures as well to be like, does it look like their signature? Does it look like their handwriting? And then we mark it for that as well, and then challenge the signatures.
Okay, that would be the same for LA County as well, right?
I imagine it's a very similar process.
Okay, so
yes.
The odds of, and what you were saying now is because people can track their ballots now, so the odds of multiple votes by dead people and all the rest, as you were saying, is a system that's really hard to do now, right? Isn't that?
It's very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah. You'd have to have I don't even know if you had a really organized effort where.
Right.
No, you would have to make up fake voters too, I think, at that extent. It's like, how are you doing that? They need to have a driver's license or a social security number.
That's a lot of work.
Well, it's a lot of work, and when we see that, so with online registration, we see them come through too, and it's like, that's a fake person. What is that? Who did that?
So you do see some of the joke where,
Yeah,
okay.
I think people are doing it just to see if we'll register them, and in the last few days, I've done quite a few myself, and I'm going, for real? Why did they think that was going to come through? But it was like they're naming their pet or something and trying to put a registration through, and it's like, no. You do have to have a physical address is good, a name,
right.
Some sort of ID, whether it be your driver's license or the last four of your social, something we can compare, and then we validate with the DMV too to see if it's a real ID number, like associated with that name.
Got it.
So even if you took somebody else's driver's license and put a different name, we'd validate it and be like, that's not a real person.
Okay,
So,
got it.
yes, it would be very difficult.
All right. Yeah, that's one of the things we'd hoped. And the other one is, I think, on these recounts, whether they had the former governor of Wisconsin on, he was talking about a race that did flip when they did a recount. But the thing is they did the whole statewide recount, and it changed the vote totals by like 150 or something like that.
For the entire state?
Right, and that was enough to flip it.
Flipped it.
But,
well, you would want to do a recount if it was the entire state.
Right, but I mean, but the point is, I think
votes.
it's almost urban legend that, I mean, the odds of getting 20,000 votes or something like, I mean, it's not going to happen, right? I mean, the odds of that happening are just...
It's very unlikely. I'm surprised when it was that close they didn't just do their own manual counts before they certified the election. That's interesting to me. Because I must be overly cautious, but whenever it's anything that close, it's like, well, we're counting them all.
Okay, you just do it anyway.
Yeah, we're just going to count them all. We want to know for sure. I don't
Yeah.
want to certify something and not be certain that that was the result. So,
Yeah,
because that's my job at the end of the canvas is certify. These are the results, and I truly believe these are the results. So if I'm going to sign my name to it, I want it to be accurate.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's good. I guess that was one of the things we were hoping is that people would see that there's a process to this, and it's not a monolithic thing. I mean, because with all the individual elected officials and all the individual, I mean, for there to be any systemic fraud is almost impossible, right? Isn't that one of the safeties of the system?
I feel like because there's so many of us and it's split up the way it is too, I think that also makes
and you're all
makes it
different.
that much safer.
And you're all different parties. You're all. I mean, it's not.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
So even when we hire for vote centers, we take that into consideration, just so there's not some coercion or something happening. And when we try to get people selected that are different parties in a certain vote center, so that they aren't going to all collude together. Or
so their allegiances would naturally be different, even in.
Yeah. So that is taken into consideration when selecting people. So.
Very good. Very good. I mean, with all the lawsuits, what would your guess be when we'll have a projected? I mean, I guess it's all based on lawsuits now. What courts it goes through and everything else, as far as nationally, when they may call this thing? Huh?
That's interesting. California has to submit theirs. The state counties have to get their information to the state for the president by December 2nd. I don't know what their deadline is, but there's a really tight time period there that they have to send their results on.
Because Electoral College technically meets in December, right? Isn't that
right? It has to be in, and so I think December it needs to be December. So
Okay.
I don't know what other counties are with their what their time period is for canvases, but we're done December 2nd. It's got to go out, and we don't have any more time. So if they're going to be in court, they better decide quick.
Well, and luckily for California, it doesn't. I mean, the margins doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean,
We have wide margins.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not going to matter. As far as, do you know, as a county rep, do you speak to any of the counties? Well, will you talk to the registrar from the other county? I mean, do you guys ever have issues that you all talk about? I mean, is it?
We regularly communicate.
You do?
Yes,
Okay.
so we even have like an email strand, and anytime anyone has an issue, it goes out and everybody puts in their input if they've experienced similar situations, or even though there's counties that'll put out at 9:00 on election night, well, we're all done, good luck everybody else.
Neener, some of those, yeah.
So we all talk regularly, and we're all pretty much on the same page
Yeah.
as to what's going on. But it's nice to have those connections, because there's lots of people out there who've been doing elections a lot longer, and being able to reach out to as little as I had a voter complain about our signage for our drop boxes and vote centers. And he said, you really need to go look at Amador counties, they've got the best signs. So I messaged Kim in Amador County. I'm like, I need to know what kind of signs you have because I have a voter admiring them and ours aren't as good as yours. And so she did. She sent over, this is where I went. And I got that. Like, okay, I'll go try to make some signs like yours real quick.
So it's even competitive on signage, right? You want to make sure, yeah. And I think I dropped mine off at a location in Arnold, and I know, I think my son and his girlfriend, I think she dropped hers off in a location in Angels Camp. But she could tell when she dropped hers off, she could feel, you could tell that box was getting just about.
It's full.
It was just about full.
Save Mine and Angels Camp had to be picked up regularly.
Really?
Yes. Regularly, as we were already going every other day, we had to make extra trips for. But the store managers were really awesome at monitoring it too. All of the store managers, they would call us and be like, I think this box is getting full. Can you come over and do a pickup? So that was really helpful. I just think everyone involved in this election, everybody cared and wanted it to be successful.
Well, that I think is one of the things that, even though we're in a contentious phase of it right now, is, if you would have been believing all the news, you would have thought that the cities would be burning. And, and it's like everything is
pretty good.
There's a process, and everybody seems to, that's what I think is, if there's any bright lights on this one is that the system worked, the votes got done, they're going to be counted, recounted, whatever, but the sky isn't falling, there's no, the bridges aren't burning type of stuff, right? Isn't that?
Right. Well, and I don't think Calaveras County is in its own little bubble, so
no,
my experiences were not what you would see on the national news, that's for sure.
Yeah, because most people are pretty civic-minded, right?
I really do believe that.
Yeah.
I might be naive. I tell people I have a high standard for people and I really want them to live up to it, and usually they do. So. I don't know.
Well, there's one thing that was fascinating to me is this goes in a little bit on the news side that kind of goes out of a little bit of our subject matter here, but it kind of goes to that, is if you look at the internals of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, there's a voting bloc that was traditionally your libertarian-leaning, civil libertarian type of stuff, and there is a civil libertarian bloc of the Democratic Party, and there's a civil libertarian bloc of the Republican Party. And the interesting thing to me has been is even though libertarians on the left and libertarians on the right may not even like or agree with each other at all the time, but if you look at pragmatically, they're the principled voters, so to speak. They're looking, they're, the civil libertarian type. If you combine those blocks, that is still the largest single block of voters. If you combine the civil libertarian block of the Democratic Party and the civil libertarian block of the Republican Party, and maybe the Libertarian Party itself. But if you combine that block, it's still significantly the largest block. And I think that's still the safety valve a little bit because, there's the ones who are the hard partisans that that make all the news. The hard partisans that make all the news, this is war, all the rest of this stuff. But if you look at the internal numbers, the largest blocks of each party is still that civil libertarian bloc, which is they just want fair play, these are my beliefs, this is what I believe, but it's not
pushing anything on others.
Yeah, and I think that's still the safety valve. I think that's still this, maybe I'm wrong, but you look at that and it's still the safety valve. And the other one is, I'll probably get in trouble for talking about this one a little bit, but if you look at this goes off in the news, this is my personal subject, is the thing on news now is so much of what we consume isn't really news. It's
that's interesting coming from a news person.
No, but what I mean is most things, for example, if you believe in Pareto's law of distribution, and if you remove the political labels from something, 80% of us will agree on 80% of the issues 80% of the time. It's almost a statistical certainty.
We're very agreeable.
Yeah. Isn't that, is it... Well, I guess a question on that is, since you have to, since you're a non-part, with your job as a non-partisan one, is how much trouble, and I guess trouble's a bad word to use, but as far as, do you see, are people really political when they come to you? Do you see, what type of feedback do you see?
I would say a small percentage are.
A small percentage.
A small percentage are.
Is they just see the world through that prism, and they think that that's something that's going to...
I don't know. I don't know if it's just trying to find alliance. I don't know if that's when I'm talking to people, or they're trying to see, are you a like-minded person?
If you're part of their team, if you're on their team.
Yeah, so that's where I just have to put blinders on.
You're process-centric,
it is,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, your process, this is, yeah.
So.
All right. Well, it says we got 3 minutes left. I guess to kind of wrap this election year up, it went well? It went smooth?
It went very well. So well, I'm making this challenging for you because you don't have any dirt to talk about.
We actually like that. We want things to go smooth.
It did go very smooth. We always have people that are upset we can't do exactly what they want us to do.
Right.
And somebody upset because they had to vote a provisional ballot last night, and very angry. Then this morning I called them, and they're already smoothed over, the tension's over. It's like, we are most likely going to count that ballot, but just because you yelled at me, I can't count it and not know that you haven't already submitted another ballot. That's not good either.
Now, we had talked a little bit last month on some of the nostalgia factor of moving away from some of the community voting locations and stuff like that. Did you hear any repercussions of that at all, or anybody
moving location?
Nostalgic for the old?
A little bit. I don't know if because March we kind of prepped people.
Yeah.
So not as much as you might expect.
Good.
Good. I don't know. I don't know if we just prepare for those hits, but we didn't have a lot of complaints. We had some pop-up vote centers. Not quite the turnout we would have liked. I would have liked to see that the pop-ups were more organized. So if we do them again, we've got more thinking to do there.
Yeah.
It was kind of one of those last minute, we'll make people happy by doing this, and it could have been better organized.
Yeah.
The vote centers obviously are a more efficient operation than trying to put up a real quick few-hour site. Because the time prep going into that and it's still not being smooth was like, we probably put 15 hours into having this 4-hour site. And
that's not efficient.
It was not very efficient. So if we do it again, we're going to have to think it through a lot more. So just little things like that we are going to have to work on.
Thank you. Thank you for what you thank you for what you do. No, I mean that sincerely. Is we're lucky in these counties, that in small counties, that we have caring people that this is their life's work. This is what they do. And it's and thank you. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you.